What if the key to success with short-term rentals is not the amount of properties that you're managing, but the quality of those properties?
When you look at the quality that we try to deliver over the entirety of the guest experience, starting from the second they see your property as a little thumbnail when they're searching for Airbnbs all the way through checkout, that is probably our secret sauce, or what's a little bit different than.
Today we're speaking with Andrew Rodriguez. He's the co-owner of Stay Booked. They are a full-service short-term rental management company designed to maximize the revenue for larger and unique vacation homes.
I think it's good anytime that you're finding yourself frustrated in a guest interaction to really take a step back, remove your own perspective, kind of step in those guest shoes, and it'll really help, because people are coming from all different walks of life.
My name is Jason Muth. I'm a 29-time Airbnb superhost. I've worked in the media business for 25 years, and in 2016, I launched my Chapter 2, and that's all in short-term rentals. Since then, I've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our properties and the ones that we co-host. And we're here to show you how to create a smart stay. Now, here's Andrew Rodriguez. What's going on, Andrew Rodriguez? Welcome to the Smart Stay Show.
Hey guys, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I've had my eye on inviting you on the show for a little while now. I should say that we're in the same mastermind community, the Short-Term Rental Secrets Mastermind. We just went through this Limitless program together also. You always had some really amazing things to share. And I'm like, I got to get this guy on the show. So, thank you so much for agreeing to pop on with us.
Of course. Thank you. And the feelings are likewise as well. So really been following you guys as well from a distance.
Wow.
I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more.
Before we really get into everything you're doing with your company, Stay Booked, and all these amazing properties that you guys are posting in places like the Poconos, I've got to throw in our first question that we're asking all of our guests these days, which is, what superpower sets you apart from all your peers?
Yeah, that's a great question. When my wife Lindsay and I first got into short-term rentals, and I'll go through the background in a little bit, what we've really tried to keep our eye on is quality over quantity. Everybody's kind of has their own different approach and secret sauce, but for us, that's been super helpful in terms of the properties that we wanted to invest in and later manage, and then also just in terms of our day-to-day decision making. So, this is a high volume business. You can get stretched thin very, very easily. And we're always just trying to focus on what's going to move the needle for us the furthest at any point in time. So that's really kind of our guiding principle.
Rory, I don't know if you noticed it from Andrew's website, but all of his properties are kind of he's defined what he wants to be hosting, both with what he owns and what he's hosting. And they all fit in the same category of larger, spectacular properties with beautiful photography and great design, that are in a drivable vacation destination for a major city.
And, how I feel about that. Niches are incredibly important. Having a prototype and sticking to it, because that's what you do well. There are going to be different things that other people can do well, but if you want to grow and if you want to really provide consistent experience, it's the way to do it.
Yeah. So you bought your property first, and then you started co-hosting. Give me a little bit of the backstory there.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So our short-term rental journey starts in 2022, but to maybe take a quick step back and then kind of speed up from there, our real estate journey really starts in 2015. So my wife Lindsay and I met in college. We moved to New York City after that, and in 2015 we were living in a 480 square foot studio in New York, and I actually took a job reverse commuting to the northwest corner of Connecticut. So I was spending a lot of time in the car, and found bigger pockets. And really that kind of tapped into something emotionally with me where, I looked at the background that I came from, a very working class family. My parents were always busy. They provided for us really well, but we never had, a vacation home, a second kind of slice of paradise. And I wanted that for my family as we got a little bit older. So in 2020, we ended up buying a multifamily long-term property in New Jersey. And that got us into the real estate bug a little bit. From there, my plan initially was to just have that property for 10 years or so, and then eventually take the equity out. And by the time I was 40, afford our house at the lake or at the ski area, and be able to just Airbnb that on the side to cover costs. And that was really my only grand plan at that time. And in 2022, our son was born in May. And in October, he was actually hospitalized for a week in the pediatric intensive care unit with the RSV virus. And my wife Lindsay and I at the time, she's a marketing executive in consumer goods. I was at the time an enterprise software sales rep. So we had very demanding jobs. And that week was pretty miserable, to be honest with you, outside of our son being very sick and wanting to take care of him. I would sleep at the hospital up every 45 minutes overnight. I'd then go home. I would nap for about 2 hours, and then I'd work my day job at home. Lindsay would pull the reverse shift. She would come in, she'd work at the hospital during the day, talk to the nurses in between meetings, and then she would go home and she'd sleep at night. And basically, we'd like bring meals to each other, in between. Serendipitously, right before that happened, I had started to think about Airbnbs a little bit more, or short-term rentals a little bit more, from a real estate investment perspective, because everybody was talking about the cash flow, post-COVID in 2022. And after we got out of the hospital with my son, I decided to really dive into that. One of my best friends lives down in North Carolina. He and his wife have a couple cabins in the Smokies. And I basically texted her and I was like, hey, where do I start? And she said, go follow this guy, Mike Sjogren, on Instagram. I think his handle was at the time like _Airbnb guy. Mm-hmm. So I started following him, quickly found out that he has a mastermind coaching program, which is how you and I ended up eventually getting connected. And we had one informational call with Mike Riley from the program. And Lindsay and I talked about it afterwards. And we were like, look, we could use our business acumen to go out on our own and just stumble our way through this. But if we really are serious about changing the trajectory of our lives and our family's life, like, let's make this investment. It's more money than we're comfortable investing, and we probably have ever invested in anything besides our college degrees. And we did it. So we joined STR Secrets in November, and we purchased our first short-term rental in February. And I can go in a little bit more detail. That went live last July. And that's kind of how we got started.
You still have that multi in Jersey?
We do. It's a 2-family. It's basically right behind Jersey City, in a town called Harrison, which is very much turning over right now, but you can actually jump right on the PATH subway train into Lower Manhattan in 25 minutes.
Is that a situation where you live there and then you rent out the other unit?
We do still, actually, yeah. So we used the FHA, first time home buyers loan, 3.5% down to buy that. We purchased it for $760. It's probably appraised around $925 right now. Mm-hmm. And we live in the downstairs unit. It's been great. So we'll move out of there eventually, but so far, no qualms at all. I'm very happy. I'm very happy I found bigger pockets on all those drives, for sure. We saved up more money, and we did a 10% down second home loan. So if anybody's not familiar with that, there's a loan product where you can essentially purchase a second home. You have to stay in it for personal use at least 14 days out of the year, but you can only put down 10% for that. So we use that, and that helped us buy a 6-bedroom in the Poconos. Purchase price was $524, but we got $25K back in seller credits, which we then used for part of that rehab budget.
Wow. But properties have gone up a lot in the Poconos, haven't they?
Yeah, it depends on the property a little bit. But I actually looked in the Catskills in upstate New York for like 3 months. I knew that market like the back of my hand, but inventory was really low back then. So again, kind of serendipitous, shifted to the Poconos, and within a week we found this 6-bedroom cabin that is riverfront, just checked a lot of the kind of unique boxes that we look for, and we got under contract with that.
And the way that you got into it, a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, we think that it's people who just have a couple properties or they're just getting started with short-term rentals, and your pathway to how you were able to purchase that property is a clear pathway that many people can follow. The FHA loan on a multifamily property outside a major metropolitan area where you're living, building up equity in a property like that, working, professional full-time jobs, W-2 earners, like where you actually have money coming in from an employer, saving up money for that second home with a low down payment, that you're probably qualifying just through a typical debt to income, qualification. Is the property in your name, or is it an LLC?
It's now in an LLC, but we purchased it in our name.
It did. Did you just transfer it over, or did you refinance?
Yep.
Huh.
Now we transferred it over. Yeah.
Rory has words about that, but you know.
Well, there's the risk in there, and I don't want to derail the conversation.
Yeah.
No, but it's good stuff though, because people, they want to know how to acquire these properties too. So this is like a good conversation about, you know, professionals that found a way to buy that first property, you know, that was not the home in which they're living. That's the same thing we did. We just did it like 10 years later. You know, we did keep things in our name, but you know, that's we could have a whole separate podcast about like
and I'm not an attorney, so I'm always open to perspective too. So
yeah,
I don't know everything.
When did you decide that you wanted to start adding on co-hosting properties?
That's a great question. So that 6-bedroom, acquired it in February. It went live in July. We did what I would call full cosmetic renovation. We didn't knock down walls, but we put a lot of lipstick on that. And just for reference for other people too, before I kind of jump into the co-hosting, that property was previously a short-term rental run by the people we bought it from. It was doing $65K a year. We underwrote it to do $119K a year, and it completed its first year in service at $121,000. So almost kind of right on the money. And that renovation and having, again, just the quality over quantity in terms of how we set up a design. We didn't design that. We used a professional designer. You don't have to do that, but it's something you should consider for sure. And that really helped us out. So when that property went live, the first couple months went well. You know, learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, but overall, like, we were very happy with it. And in December of 2023, so less than a year ago, we decided to bring on, you know, some co-hosting clients. We stumbled into a few owners that were using one of the large national management companies in the Poconos, and we brought those properties on. We got one live very quickly within 30 days, and then after that, a lot of learning lessons came in. So the second property, it was actually almost 5 months from the time that we signed the contract to the time that property got live. We had a tree fall on some power lines. There's just a lot of stuff that went wrong there, and then we have been slowly kind of, you know, going up that growth trajectory on the hockey stick curve from there, and we're up to 6 properties under management now, as you mentioned, Jason, all of which are 4 to 6 bedrooms.
What have you learned about managing large properties like this? Is there one massive takeaway that, you know, was an aha moment, or something that you would have done differently, or something that you could impart upon people that have properties of this size?
Yeah. 2 things. There's not much different between a large property and a small property in many ways. They're not the same necessarily, but there's a lot that is the exact same. But a large property, typically speaking, will have higher revenue potential. There's a lot of nuances to that, certainly. But, you know, if we're going to spend the time managing a property, we want to spend one that's going to be worth it for us. Where there is some difference is, I would say, in the turnover operations. You really want to be dialed in on your turnover operations, making sure your cleaning team, you're working with a great cleaning team, so that you trust that you have a handyman or a runner that can be there to go get a new grill brush on a Saturday morning, anything like that. A lot of people will just simply kind of beat up the house a little bit more. And you have also, besides the wear and tear, just more opinions in your property at any point in time. You have more guests that may like something, may not like something, may think something's out of place. So you want to have your operations dialed in, but at the end of the day, it's just an STR, and there's a lot of the same things regardless of the size of the property.
It's interesting you say that about the opinions. I always kind of take guest feedback in a couple different categories. Like, number 1 is like, this has to get fixed immediately. Number 2 is like, okay, let's put this on the list. You know, they have a point, but maybe we'll get to it at some point. And number 3 is, this is a completely ridiculous thing this person's asking for. And I don't say it in the way to the guests. It's always like, oh, thanks so much for your feedback. Really appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. But like, you know, if there's an owner that we're working with, or if I'm the owner, like, I'll file that kind of stuff away. Like, I mean, this is a situation that just happened. Like, you know, one of our properties sleeps 10 people. We had guests show up there, and great guests and everything, but they're like, oh, do you have a potato masher? And I don't. As one doesn't always have at their properties. Oh, it'd be great if you had a potato masher. Or, oh, hey, you have 2 can openers here, and like, we had a hard time getting this can open. And I was kind of like, you know what? He's right, because I had a hard time getting a can open with that same can opener. So I was like, oh, thanks so much for the feedback. Like, you know, we'll make sure we bring another can opener or something. And sure enough, I was there on Monday, and I brought a potato masher and a can opener.
That's what you do.
Yeah, I think actually, just quickly on that point, a great lesson in that is picking your battles, particularly when it comes to guest relations. We had a group at a house that sleeps, really sleeps like 18 to 20. And the lead booker said that we didn't have any bath mats in the master bathroom. I'm like, I know we have bath mats in the master bathroom. And I looked at the cleaner photos and we did. And so I just, politely asked her. And she said, yeah, there's one for the shower, but there's not one for the soaking tub. And there's also not one to put our feet down when we sit on the toilet. And she asked us to send more bath mats so they could put their feet on it when they sat down to go to the bathroom. And at the end of the day, for the nightly rate she paid for the review score, we obliged. And it was
not something I'm going to do all the time, but it is what it is. Sometimes you just
How did you get the bath mats over there? Did you like Walmart Plus or DoorDash, or what did you do?
We will do that sometimes depending on the availability of the cleaning team. That house, the cleaning team we use cleans 60 houses in that market. So they always have somebody around, and they just dropped one off quickly.
Huh. Okay. Let's talk about like those terms you mentioned a runner, right? And for people that maybe don't know what that person's role is, like, can you describe what a runner does?
Sure. And a lot of times the person that holds these titles can be the same person across multiple different titles. A runner is just someone who you have almost on speed dial that can go and pick something up, drop off a third set of keys if someone gets locked out, like anything that can just be almost like a task rabbit, but just a specific individual that you trust, and is available for you if needed. One of the kind of tips that we do is we try to work with cleaning teams that are not national, like franchises of cleaning companies, but are also not just one, man or woman cleaning team. So there's like a mid-level scale of a cleaning team there. Usually it's a team of 4 to 10 people, and they typically will also do some maintenance and some running for us as well. So we've got a couple different quote unquote runner options for every house. And I usually also look for one person in a market too. So there's one young gentleman that he's only 24. I met him at a Poconos STR conference over the summer. He has a cleaning company that he just launched. We don't use him for cleaning, but we do use him as a runner because he wants to work with us. I really like him personally and I trust him. So I've used him to, one time an owner sent a bunch of supplies and actually updates to a property that she was fixing up in between guest stays. They arrived late from Amazon at the same time as guests were showing up, and they arrived 3 doors down. So I had to call this kid up on a Friday night, and he was amazing about it. And he went and he basically contacted the owner of the property 3 doors down. So he didn't get, trespassing or didn't get any altercation. Got all those packages and then brought him over and handled stuff without interrupting the guest stay at all. So just it really comes down to trust, in those relationships.
I think having that trusted runner is a key missing piece, because in a lot of these conversations we have, people talk about developing their system so that they have standard operating procedures that they can share with everybody and kind of run an autopilot. But in truth, that's not how everything works. We need somebody who we can trust to exercise a little bit of judgment on our behalf with these unusual and unpredictable situations, like just as simple as Amazon delivering a package 3 doors down. That's not something that's in your SOPs. That's not something that, is in your routine checklist. So having that trusted person on the ground, I think, is a key missing piece that I don't think we talk about enough.
I always think a lot of what we do as hosts of short-term rentals, whether we own the property or whether we're hosting someone else's, is our job is to solve problems, right? And to also try to prevent them from happening in the very first place. And the problems can be as stupid as like, you don't have a bath mat here, right? Or it could be like the house is flooded, right? And that's kind of the spectrum right there. But, you never know what's going to irritate a guest. And you also, I'm sure that you take great pride in your reputation and having the guests have great experiences. And even you probably do everything possible. And there's always going to be those people that are going to be complainers, right? Yep. How do you kind of move on from either a bad review or just someone that is a little too gripey for what they should be?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And actually, my background previously, as I mentioned, was in sales. I was not an attorney, but I was in sales for legal and compliance. And one thing that I thought about for a decade was risk mitigation. And to get nerdy for a second, we always thought about it on a risk mitigation scale. So how likely is something bad to happen? And then what's the impact of that from low to high if it does happen? So In prepping your operations for a guest experience, I'm always trying to think of prioritizing what we have to do at a house for a given week, on that risk scale, to try to head off anything that actually happens, because that's the best way to prevent a bad review, is to not let it happen in the first place. If something does happen, and it will eventually, at our 6-bedroom, we had maintained a review score of, I think, 4.99 on that through like 55 reviews. We were really happy with that. We got our first 2-star recently. And the woman, I think we always, like you, Jason, try to put ourselves in the guest shoes, really put validity to any negative feedback that we get and take that seriously, and not just let our egos dismiss that. That said, she mentioned a building that's 400 yards away across a river and across a street, and said it was shaking our house, which I've been to that house. I just know that's not happening. So she was probably mistaken. There's maybe something else happening. I'm not sure. 2-star review, we called Airbnb. They are not bringing reviews down like they used to anymore. It's just not happening. So I think at the end of the day, we kind of sat with it and we said, look, what was the overall impact to that property's review score? It went from a 4.99 to a 4.7 or 4.6. We've gone 5 stars after that. And our overall host profile, dipped, I think, like 0.01%. So it's a hurt to the ego, but you turn the page and the next day I didn't even remember it. And you just try to take the lessons learned as much as possible.
I feel like I made a comment on one of our coaching calls when we were talking about this. I think you have like 100. Right? Yeah, I did. I remember this distinctly. And we got like a couple 3 stars this summer, which we don't normally get. But, we're well over 400 and change reviews on Airbnb. The vast majority are 5-star, knock on wood. Mm-hmm. And I always feel like whenever we get something that maybe we need to overcome, I just go crazy responding to reviews or getting people to review us. And the more properties that you have, since we started co-hosting earlier this year with Pride Away Stays, the amount of reviews that we have is just above and beyond. And if you do things right, it's more likely you're going to get a 5-star than these outliers. If you're getting a lot of these bad reviews, then obviously there's something going on with either the property or your system. But I think it's just common to get them these days, and just like a great PR campaign to try to squash bad news is to just overcome it with an abundance of great news. So it's like you have to get more and more 5-star reviews to push that one down. And the other feedback, I don't know if I gave it on the call when you mentioned it, but we don't do this all the time, but we try to respond to the reviews, even if it's a simple thank you so much, like we love hosting you, whatever it is, just so it doesn't seem strange that we're going to write this multi-paragraph diatribe against the bad review and we never acknowledge the 5 stars. I think the guests can see that we're getting really defensive. Instead, if it's just our everyday of responding to reviews, great review, respond, thanks so much. Oh, here's a problem here. Oh, sorry you felt that way. Whatever it was, we did our best. Hopefully we'll see you again or not, and then move on. Right? That I think that's gotten a better rhythm of us and how we deal with those negative reviews. Obviously, we take the feedback, if indeed it is feedback. You should go rush over to that house and tell it to stop shaking your property, right? We had a situation though this summer of shaking, literally similar thing, but it was a park that was being built directly next to our the property was on Commercial Street in Provincetown, and the town broke ground on a beautiful new park in a kind of abandoned picnic area. It happened to coincide with the high season. We didn't know when they were going to start. Well, we had guests that were there when they started, and sure enough, the house was shaking during it. And we got a 3-star review as a result. And I tried to get it down. It wouldn't come down. And that's a long story there. But we just basically moved on and just tried to delight more and more people. And we put more messaging in our communications, in the interactive guide, in the Airbnb listing, explaining what's happening next door, just so people, when they book, they have that acknowledgement that they've read the fact that this is happening next door. And we didn't have a single bad review as a result afterward.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think particularly when it comes to guest experience, in any situation you find yourself in that might be a little challenging, whether that's actively dealing with a guest complaint, or in this case, trying to almost do like a post-mortem on a review and see what you could have changed, you always want to try to get upstream of the problem as much as possible, because that's typically where the root cause is. So maybe that's something where the guest, and not speaking to your guys' situation specifically, but are the guest expectations correct? Was the house, left or cleaned in the right way that it should have been for the guest's experience? And even the review score, I see a lot of people that come to us, or a lot of people on Facebook complaining that a guest left a 4 or 3-star review, but everything was perfect. Well, then they probably don't know how Airbnb review score works. So in our messages, we slowly trickle in the mention of a 5-star review, starting from their first morning check-in message. So the morning after they arrive at the property, they get a very brief informal message, just making sure everything's all right. We state that we want a 5-star review. We have a magnet on the fridge that has the chart of the 5-star review scale. And then we, in our checkout message, just put a little PS and mention again. And none of that, is proprietary or revolutionary. Most people in the industry, or a lot of people in the industry, do that. But if you're struggling with bad reviews, just kind of take a holistic look at the guest experience, and you might be able to change that end result a lot of times.
Yeah, we do the same thing. We just pepper in the word 5-star into a lot of things. We don't have the fridge magnets. I've seen one where like it gets a little grim. Like the 1-star is like, host should be locked up in jail. And I'm like,
yeah.
That's a bit much. I don't know. Maybe that's what's on yours. But
yeah, you can always overdo it too. But I think a lot of it comes down to how it's delivered ultimately.
Tell us about some like delightful, great guest stories that you might have had from your first full year doing this, both for yourself and for others.
Mm-hmm. Generally, what we get a lot is not any one example that stands out, but just a lot of multi-generational families that we host. They don't have a lot of opportunities to get together. You probably have a set of grandparents, and then you have 2 or 3 adult siblings with their grandkids that might live in multiple different states. They maybe see each other at the holidays, maybe not. And so providing those spaces for that specific target demographic has been really rewarding. One that's maybe a little outside the norm, but actually hits home a little bit harder for us, is the head cleaner and head of cleaning and head of maintenance for one of our most reliable cleaning companies out there. It's a husband and wife couple. They're probably in their mid-40s. We love them. They're amazing. We literally could not run our business without them. They are truly like our trusted partners. And we I shouldn't even say let them, but we gave them the opportunity to stay at the 6-bedroom that we own with the wife, the Nicole, for her father's birthday, with her siblings and with her nephews and nieces. And she said it made her father's like year. So that was a really impactful one for us, to be able to give, these folks, a weekend away, especially at a property that they spend so much time and energy on. So that was a really rewarding experience for us.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, we just had guests that stayed at one of our properties, and they were having, I don't know if it was asbestos or something mitigated from their property, but they had to stay, they had to evacuate, and they were getting work done, and they needed somewhere to stay. So they stayed for 2 weeks. They ended up booking a 3rd week, and they actually ended up leaving early because the work actually got done on schedule, which they were surprised by. But, they had really nice things to say afterward, and they were just grateful that they could just go somewhere nearby their home while their home was getting worked on. It's little things like that sometimes you forget that, we're providing a service for people in need of X, Y, or Z. It could be housing. I mean, right now you're in North Carolina at your in-laws, as you mentioned before we hit record, and they weren't super impacted by the hurricanes. It sounds like some of the towns you guys go to were, but man, there's a lot of people that were looking for housing, and one of the places that they turned were to short-term rentals in other drivable nearby markets.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good point that you make in terms of thinking about the situation the guest is in, and particularly actually taking a step back towards some of the times you can get a guest who maybe it's not the easiest. A lot of times we found that some of the folks that are maybe the most difficult or frustrating to deal with as a host are actually the people who are stretching themselves financially the most to book your house. Like, they've really spent a significant portion of their income on this property for the week or for the weekend. So they have a lot of skin in the game financially for them. So they're viewing their experience with you through a much more detailed lens than maybe someone who makes double the income and they go on 5 vacations a year at Airbnb. So I think it's good anytime that you're finding yourself frustrated in a guest interaction, to really like take a step back, remove your own perspective, kind of step out of those guest shoes, and it'll really help, because people are coming from all different walks of life into your home.
I want to start to wrap up, but I have a couple of final questions. Rory's got two. But are you guys still working full time, like you and Lindsay?
My wife, Lindsay, is. So she's head of marketing for a consumer goods company. And then I'm not. In April of this year, actually, I left my tech sales job and run this business full time. So that in and of itself is probably a conversation for another time. Originally, she was going to leave, and then we ended up changing that over. But it's been amazing, and I love it.
Well, it's funny. Rory was the real estate professional while I worked for a W-2 company for 25 years. Well, not the same company. And then when that job ended, suddenly I became the real estate professional. So, our status remained the same in our tax filing. And yes, that is a completely separate podcast. Rory, do you have any final questions for Andrew before I can get to my last one?
I actually want to just kind of continue on with the guest experience there. And, this is, I think 10 years ago, we could have easily just had a pretty horrible guest experience, did the bare minimum, and things would have turned out fine. Guests now expect a lot more, and hosts provide a lot more. Is there anything that you're doing to improve the guest experience that you think is kind of unique or special?
So in a nutshell, no. But in and of that self, I think it actually, what we do is special. So there are some people that go above and beyond with their gift baskets, handpicked bottles of wine, which again, as an attorney, I'm sure that has its own liability concerns that you think about. But sometimes there's a grand gesture that a lot of people will leave, especially individual short-term rental owners that are just managing their own house. They put a lot of love into those things. We leave gift baskets. We don't do anything extraordinary. What we do, though, is we try to do everything very, very well at a very high level. So all of our properties, Jason mentioned, we're very proud of how they look, how they're designed, the quality of amenities that they have, how they're photographed. Our communications are very good, our operations. So there's not one thing, but when you look at the quality that we try to deliver over the entirety of the guest experience, starting from the second they see your property as a little thumbnail when they're searching for Airbnbs all the way through checkout, that is probably our secret sauce, or what's a little bit different than some other folks.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things you can do with gift baskets and, things that you're going to make the stay special. We try to make the stay special by making you show up at the property and have everything you need there, right? Full cabinets full of stuff, not one roll of toilet paper and, a little bottle of shampoo like some, national companies and others do. It just seems like you're skimping so much. And I agree. I mean, you can go way above and beyond if you want to, but, I think that the effort that a host or an owner puts into a property, it should show with the people that are booking it. And I like to think that with everything that we touch, we care so much about the homes, whether we own them or whether we co-host them, that I'm hoping guests will show up respecting the design, the artwork, the thoughtfulness, the trust that we're leaving in them, that we leave things in closets. If they need them, just grab it. Don't steal things. I've had stuff that's been stolen over the years, but I can't tell you what it was. And I've been doing this for 8 years, right? So, I think that people that do it on a high level like this are few and far between. Maybe some of this was in your DNA before you got going, but maybe the short-term rental secrets group and people like the folks that we interact with, I always say we kind of challenge each other to get better and better and better. And I don't think there's a ton of people that are in our mastermind group that are operating on a low level. I don't know what you think, but everyone seems like they're just operating at an elite level. And it makes everybody else who's not operating in that level, it just, stands out.
And well, Jason, there's one thing I think you do that it's not one of the grand gestures or a great gift basket, but it's something I was hesitant to have you do, is early in their stay, you send them an automated message just checking in and seeing how everything's going. I was hesitant because I thought that was going to drum up a series of complaints, but fortunately I was wrong. And that gives you an opportunity to connect with the guest, demonstrate that you care how their stay is going. And most of the time you're just getting good feedback, and it's just good for the relationship with them. And every once in a while, it actually raises one of those legitimate concerns or semi-legitimate concerns before it results in a loss of a star in the review.
Yeah. We try to pepper them with comments that we are available and we're here, but not overindulge them with too many levels of communication. And we use Hospitable as our PMS. I don't know what you're using. Yeah. And I've had some feedback for Hospitable. And, if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to take this one seriously, but I'm trying to figure out a way to, have, specific messages not go out in automatic fashion if indeed there was a communication before that message. Meaning my 11 a.m. message does not have to go out to people if I've already had communication with them after they arrived at the property and we went back and forth on something, but you have to manually disable that. So that's why there's a product roadmap, right? Hey, Andrew, last question we have for you, and obviously we're going to put everything in the show notes. We're going to put your website, stay-book.com, in the show notes if people actually want to look at your properties, want to learn more about you, want to have you co-host the properties in any of the markets that you're in. But what's one thing that you wish that you knew when you started that you've learned along the way?
Fantastic question. That everyone is capable of achieving their short-term rental dreams. And you could take that more broadly than short-term rentals in their entire life. And that sounds cheesy, but at the end of the day, I think you guys would likely agree. We are no different than anybody else that's out there. We all bring our own unique experiences and skill sets, but at the end of the day, any single individual, if you're thinking about getting into short-term rentals, or you have one or two and you have grander dreams, like, you can accomplish those. You just have to be extremely intent with your actions. This is an industry that has all of the resources available to you. This is not becoming a doctor where you have to go through however many years of medical school. Like, public Facebook groups, podcasts have an immense amount of education, paid coaching programs like the Short-Term Rental Secrets, like, everything is available to you. So if it's something you feel strongly about, go out and achieve your dreams. There's really nothing holding you back besides yourself at the end of the day.
Feels like a real nod to Limitless, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, but it's true.
It's true. It is. I'm making boring watch some of those videos also. And, those certain things that we live a very cynical life and we take with a grain of salt. But I actually thought that the Limitless program was great. And there's different ways of thinking about things as a result. And comments like that are exactly what, I've taken from it too. Like, anybody can do this stuff. Like, you can learn how to do it well. You could be persistent with it. You could take it seriously, and you could have a fabulous life, or a second thing with your short-term rentals, or you could just do it poorly and not care, and then you're just going to be like a run-of-the-mill property, and our properties will be better than yours. So where can people get a hold of you, Andrew, if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate the shout-outs. Obviously, our website, stay-book.com. If you're interested in working with us or learn more about our property management services, on Instagram, it's at your YOUR Stay Booked. If anyone's interested in connecting with me individually for any networking or any way I can help people, I love talking to everybody and anybody in this industry. Instagram at andrew.j.rod. And then recently, another mastermind member, Jared Schwannard, and I actually started a meetup in New York City, because New York City is a very regulatory intensive market for short-term rentals, where there's a tremendous amount of investors and operators that live in New York and other markets that are kind of, without family or without a community. So if anybody is interested in joining those meetups, they're the first Thursday of every month, the Delancey in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. The website is meetup.com/brews-deals-NYC. Or you can just ping me on Instagram and I'll send you the link as well.
We will link all that up in the show notes. Please tell Jarrett to respond to me, because I've invited him on the podcast too, and please don't analyze it. So tell him that we're, it's going to be a great conversation. But, it's great you guys are doing this in the New York Metro. There's not a lot of people that New York's a massive, massive market, but, most of the people that are there short-term rental secrets, mastermind, a lot of people are interacting with are not living like in the New York City metropolitan area. So it's great that you're launching it there. Rory, where can people get a hold of you?
Come find me at my law firm, Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
Yes, with a new focus on short-term rental law. So, go check that out. See if he can help you out with anything related to your STRs. If you want to be on the podcast or want to learn more, watch all of our episodes. You can watch them on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. And then smartstayshow.com. We'll get you set up if you want to be a guest on the podcast. All right, Andrew, thank you so much for being part of this. This is a delightful conversation. We have to have you back. I probably can be gone for 3 hours, but we've probably lost people if we do that. So,
I love it. Thank you guys so much. This has been amazing. So,
yeah,
turn to visit as well.
All right, thank you, and thank you for listening or watching, and we'll see you next time.